All right, ladies and gentlemen, here we are again. This is The Truth is Still Straight, and I am still Jonathan St. James, along with my lovely crew, Dawn, Jim, and Donnie St. James. Hello, all.
Hello, hello.
Hello,
Hello,
hello.
hello, hello.
Hello. Is it me you're looking for? All right, so I was trying to think of something I wanted to complain about this week. I always like to go on a little rant, but I don't have much today. I complained about coming to America last week. I'm kind of over that. I can't think of anything else other than being home and not having normal TV drives me crazy. You're looking for something to watch because I'm home mostly. There's not much to do on the outside. I used to go to movies a lot. The movies are pretty much done for over here anyway. I think a few theaters may be open in New York, but otherwise you're out of luck. Everything's on Amazon Prime, HBO
HBO.
Max, and all that
Yep.
crap. So when I look for stuff, everything is gone. You TV. Okay, this week nothing shown. Next week nothing shown. I'm like, where do they think people are? They think everyone's on
Yeah.
vacation. My vacation is from the bedroom to the bathroom. So how's everything with you, Dawn? We missed you last week.
Aw, I miss you guys too. Everything's good. I was just busy doing a few things for the Native Center. That's the nonprofit organization that I've been working for. I'm setting up this cooking demo, so we had to go back and forth with a few things, but
Right, that's this
that's
week, right? The 15th.
yes, the 15th. It was supposed to be last week, but she made some revisions to the menu because she wants to target people in the community that kind of have diabetes and kind of need to, make sure that they're eating healthy and properly based on that diet. So kind of had to go back and forth because I'm not really too familiar with that, what diabetes people kind of need to eat and all that. So that was a learning curve. But yeah, and I also got accepted to a business program that I'll be doing for 6 months to kind of jumpstart being a small business owner. So yeah, it was a busy 2 weeks. Busy two
Now,
weeks.
now, what kind of business are you looking to open?
I'm trying to open like a facility for creatives, like a multimedia purpose facility that people in the community can use and kind of network and meet each other and, just, yeah, build relationships and build kind of a creative Canadian network. So fingers crossed. It's ambitious, but they're giving me all the tools and help. So I'm excited.
So, is this something you're just thinking about locally, or is this going to be throughout the country? What is your plans long term?
Well, plan is like totally national for sure. If I can get one in every province, oh man, that's a dream. But right now I'd like to focus on making it work in Barrie. And then if it's successful and if I can get really good contracts, then why not expand and do that? So yeah.
Sounds good. Okay, Jim. So, what have you been up to these days besides getting
But
stuck on a bus?
over for my stimulus to cash in. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
I'm just
Money, money,
kidding. I'm
money.
kidding. I'm sorry. I just had to throw that in. That in. Everybody's waiting for it since it got signed. But I have I've been more busy at work, to be honest with you. My role kind of expanded, and they have me going into work more. But I'm off for 3 weeks, so I'll be doing a Jonathan on vacation home, bathroom to bedroom,
You got the slow motion going on over there. We're missing like
and
everything
back
you
to
said.
bedroom. So it'll be like that for now. But things finally started. I'm not. Hold on.
Great.
We got to
I'm not,
attach like a antenna with some aluminum foil out there.
ET phone home.
Jim, what's going on over there? You were starting off good with the stimulus conversation. It's funny. Um, this with the stimulus, a couple of the banks said that they wouldn't process any stimulus checks until Wednesday. I think Chase and I can't remember what the other bank was, but I know some
Oh yeah.
people who have Cash App and they got their stimulus on Friday. I think it was.
Friday. Yeah,
Yeah.
So
I'm
what's
one of
that
those.
process? been like for you guys? Because I'm Canadian. I have no idea about like the stimulus check thing that you guys are getting. How's that been rolling out? How do you guys feel about it?
Listen, anytime I can get my money back, I'm very appreciative.
Yes. Is it easy though? So you have to cash it out? You have to go
No,
to the
so
bank?
No,
what
no.
happens is well, it depends on how you filed your taxes. So if you filed your taxes under getting a physical check, it takes longer for you to get. If you did it under like a cash card, like where they have to mail one to you, it also takes a while for you to get. But if you did direct deposit, you get it a lot faster than the other two methods.
True. Okay, that's smart then. Easy
So
way to do it through taxes.
yeah, but whoever did Cash App, because Cash App, they have,
Cash.
yeah, you can use
Wow.
Cash App like a bank account. So you can direct
Yeah.
deposit into your Cash App.
Wow. We
And
don't have that in Canada. We can't even get that app. So
wow, I know
yeah.
some countries do have it. I'm not sure. I think England has Cash App, I think, because I saw someone on YouTube post their Cash App and it had a pound sign. So
Mm. Yeah, no, we can't get that. So
Mm.
I'm like
Oh wow.
intrigued. I was like, ooh.
wow. So what do you use out there?
Yeah.
Do you have PayPal?
We got PayPal, but that's kind of it. And
Wow.
we just do a lot of like direct, like e-transferring, direct deposit. And our CERB, how our thing came out was we got checks every month through direct deposit or checks as well, but no like app thing.
Yeah. So um that's pretty. This is the third stimulus round actually in a physical year, not a calendar year, because there was two last year and then now it's this one this year.
Okay, so you guys been kind of getting it.
Yeah, yeah. So this
Oh, I
one I
thought.
think is for a person under 80,000 single is 1,400, and then it kind of trickles down to nothing after 80 for single and head of
Right.
household, and then it's 160. So I think it's 150 married, and then trickles down to 160, and then after 160 it is nothing. And
Mhm.
if you file with dependents, it's with each dependent there. So if you had like two kids, you'd get like I think additional 2,800 you'd get.
Cool. So they're looking at your whole family and basing it off that too.
Yeah.
Smart. Because not everybody needs like the same amount, kinda.
Right. Well, yes.
Well, we
Well,
don't know about needs, but hey, we'll take the
But
money. So yeah, yeah.
no doubt.
listen, all those kids I was trying to adopt the year before last, man, I wish. It would have came in handy right about now.
True. True.
So that's pretty much. So Jim, maybe you could explain this better than I could. So they were talking about Chase and another bank. I cannot remember said they wouldn't process the checks until about Wednesday. Do you know anything about that?
No, I don't. I didn't hear anything from my cheap bank about it because I'm at Chase, unfortunately. I didn't hear nothing about it, but I am kind of upset that people who had like Chime, Oxygen, those
Yes.
online banks, they got their stuff Saturday.
Yeah.
And I'm
Yeah.
sitting out here in the corner crying because I can't get mine until Wednesday. That's why people stay away from these large banking institutions now because of that type of garbage.
But I wonder if that means they're gonna get the money before they release it, because I felt
Yes, they
like
have gotten the money. They have gotten the
so
money for their release it.
right.
I can confirm they have gotten the money for their release it.
Yeah, because I'm like, in order for you to say that, you must have the money already.
Yes, they do have the money
Right.
already.
Because you
I could
can't say
definitely.
you're gonna pay someone on Wednesday and
That's
you
right.
not know
Yes.
that you don't have the money. That's like
Right.
me saying, oh, Dawn is, I'll give you the money Dawn gave me on Wednesday. I must know that I have it, or close to it.
Mhm.
So they must have received the money already. And I'm guessing they're just, playing games with the money and then
Of course, gotta get they interest
right,
off
right.
of money and keep the treasury funds for how much they can have on hand, set before they give it out.
Yeah, I'm sure that's going on.
Mhm.
That's why they love the direct deposit.
Of course.
Yeah. So, all
Oh,
right. Uh, enough of me running my mouth on stimulus. Good luck to everybody who got those stimmies. And if you want, please If you got me on your contact, cash at me. All right. Okay, so let me start this. All right, here. Okay, so today's show is going to be about, and this is my favorite, and I think this is very important, and it's sort of a double-edged sword here because um, it's really children and adults that we're talking about, but the topic is called "Parents Just Don't Understand." Now, what does that mean? So, if you listen to the previous episode when we were talking about influences, parents are often the influence, whether directly or indirectly, for the relationships that we get in and whether we succeed in the relationships or miserably fail. So, what I wanted to talk about are where parents go wrong, and where parents should go right, because that's important too. So, any of you who are parents or young people who may become parents, this is a discussion that I would like to have, because I think that it is imperative that we have a dialogue with our children so we can give them sound advice in getting in relationships, not only just to get in relationships, but also being suitable to be in a relationship, because that's just important as the person that you're choosing to be with. So I kind of wanted to talk about that. So I'll basically kick it off by talking, of course, when is it important to talk to your children? Because I find that's a very awkward moment as well. So my thing is, when you notice, in my opinion, when you got to look at your child, right? And you got to look at, so when they're starting to develop their sexuality in terms of interest in the opposite sex or the same sex, um, you have to be mindful of when you're noticing the shift in their behavior. You don't want to force a child to talk about things they're not comfortable with, and then also you don't want to wait too long to have a conversation with your child, because that can be disastrous as well. So a lot of times, I'll speak from my own experience, and maybe that's how we'll go. We'll talk about our own experiences for the most part, and there was no conversation. So unfortunately, I didn't have any parents at home that was interested in giving me any talk to say, this is, you like girls, this is how you treat girls. This is what you should perform in a relationship, what you should be expecting from somebody that you're going to date, about sex, about what's appropriate in relationships, what's not, what kind of behavior. So I didn't receive those things. And how I actually learn, which I won't go too much into, is by seeing the people around me, like my brothers and sisters, and how they engaged in relationships. And although I didn't know what the right thing was, I definitely had role models for the wrong things. And that's how I learned how to, perfect and imperfect, how I learned how to at least be a decent human being. I can't say I was the perfect boyfriend, but definitely I was able to understand some of the importance of relationships and grow from there. So I'll kind of stop there because I don't want to get too much into it. I think this is what I want to say. We'll go into the next segment. So, all right. I think our rotation now, with Danica and LaDonna Marie not being here, is Dawn. So are you ready?
Ready.
All right.
Let's
I know
kick
you're
it.
ready. I'm
Let's
feeling
kick it.
all right.
I guess to start off, like where I kind of learned it, my mom was really forward with kind of talking to me about different things. Like she knew that I was a very curious minded child. Like I always asked her questions like about stuff I saw on TV. I also, questioned things that I didn't like. I wasn't really the type of girl that chased a lot of guys. Like I wasn't really boy crazy. I cared more about school, honestly. So I was really open-minded and exploring things, and my mom was there to give me answers, which was cool. But no real like birds and the bees talk. And um, when it comes to exploration and like exploring kind of like who you are in a relationship, I find that I was kind of the same. I just learned by, well, first off, I was the oldest, so I was just making all kinds of bold moves, not really knowing if they were right or wrong, but just always going with my gut. because I am a good person. So, you know, I kind of let that guide me into what is right and wrong in relationships and, you know, with exploring your sexuality and stuff. So, yeah, I just learned from my friends and just kind of experimenting myself. So, yeah, that's what I would say for now. I feel like this is a long topic. So,
Yeah. All right, Jim, you're next on the rotation.
I got no guidance. I got nothing. I'm gonna be straight up. I got nothing. It was
oh,
it,
rough,
it
Jim.
was it was things gone over my head. It took me a while to figure things out. Some of the advice I did get from others was uncomfortable. So I sometimes I followed it, sometimes I did it. But I got nothing on both
So
sides from
are
both
you
parents.
saying you fell on every rung of the ladder of relationships?
Uh Not every, because a law of probability allows me to have one. So not all. But it was basically trial and error. It was I felt like I had nobody to really ask questions to. I was basically, I had few people that I got advice from. They were very sound. But in terms of like from a adult to a child social interaction, it was just awkward and it went over my head. I couldn't grasp it. It was just uh, mm, it was bad. I would say it was bad.
So I guess it's Donnie's turn. I know for me, I mean, being that I'm his dad, I probably started talking to him about things. What was that about? 2000 and what was I don't know, 2015 maybe. I think that's when we kind of started talking about relationships.
Hmm.
So I'll let you talk for yourself and continue from there.
Sure. Now, unless I'm misremembering it, which I don't think I am, but the way we did it was the way that worked for me. Where essentially it wasn't like a situation where we needed to sit down and have like a crazy in-depth breakdown of what everything is. It was more like something would happen and then I'd come talk about it and then we just kind of have a discussion and it would help me to organize my thoughts on the issue and then we'd move from there. I think like at least for me, I know a lot of other people that works for them as well. I rather have like that sort of rather than like a 100% instruction based thing where it seems like a lecture. I kind of like the discussion back and forth where you just kind of explore why some things happen the way they do or whatever else.
Yes.
That's true.
And what I do want to say is I think one of my favorite discussions that I had with you was about the essence of relationships, and that's respect, right? So I know I specifically remember having this conversation on the train with you, talking about when you're in a relationship, you value the person, you value the time you spend with the person, and if it doesn't work out, you don't try to force someone to be in the continue in a relationship they don't want to be in. You be appreciative of the time that you spent with them, be respectful, and if it's time to move on, you move on with respect. And because it's up to me, it's always important when you tell the story of your life, whether it's you or the person that's telling it on the other side, that they can't say that you never treated them with disrespect. And that's always been a thing with me, trying to be respectful in my relationships, if nothing else, because when you look back on it, you can't ever have someone hang something over you and say, oh, he was disrespectful to me. He treated me this way. He was nasty to me. He cursed me, called me out my name, and things like that. Not to say I've never been guilty of those things, but generally, I have showed women the utmost respect in relationships, not been disrespectful. And if that was any saving grace to anything I may have done wrong in my relationships, it would be treating women with respect, kindness, and care. So that's one thing that I had spoke to Donnie about, and that was just treating people and not allowing yourself to, especially at that age, because he was about 15 at the time. And at 15, you shouldn't have young girlfriends stressing you out. You know, if somebody's giving you a stress, that's a problem there. So it's time to reevaluate your
Mhm.
situation and then see if you possibly have to make an exit. And he's done that, as far as I know. You know, because I remember you had the particular girlfriend at the time, and she was a little bit extra for 15, and he made the exit right shortly after we had that conversation. As a matter of fact, I
Yeah.
remember that was we were coming from Comic-Con that day.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So you know, shortly after, you realized that it wasn't an ideal situation for you to be in. You handled it like a gentleman and you moved on. And uh, I think that's important. One of the things that we need to tell people, and we need, even for some of us who were told nothing, we should have those conversations with ourselves, is how to perform in a relationship and how to endure or move on, depending. So
Mhm.
that was one aspect that I wanted to talk about. So I wanted to get back to, okay, back to this discussion again, back to myself, about things that I wish my parents would have told me growing up. One is, and I guess this will be the next round, will be what we wish parents would have told us. And for me, the one thing I wish my parents would have told me was, I wish they would have told me about grooming. Some, you know, I wish someone would tell me, oh, get a haircut, you know, shave, because unfortunately for myself, I started growing facial hair at 13 to 14. I always had a mustache pretty much, but when I turned 14 years old, I grew a full beard. So at 14 in a full beard, and I had this kind of rocking Jesus look hair. So it wasn't cool, right? But I had no one to tell me, listen, you know, you might want to cut your hair, shave your beard. You know, this is how you shave. This is, you know, this is what kind of haircut you should get. And unfortunately, I didn't really have that. And by that time, the closest relative to me in elder was 21. So the next person, and by that time, my sister, who was 6 years older than me, she was already out the house, and we didn't have cell phones back then. So she was going through a lot, never heard from her. So I couldn't talk with her. And then my brother, which was 7 years, he was, forget it, just messing his life up, in and out of jail and all types of stuff. So there was no guidance there. So I had three other siblings, but they, again, they were living their lives out of the home, away. So there was no one really to give me positive guidance in terms of that. Definitely that. Sex is definitely, I wish I could have talked to someone about, because I definitely had sex before I was ready. And I wasn't ready. I met this girl
I wasn't ready.
and she wanted to have sex, but I was, you know, a 15-year-old in love. And so when a girl tells you they want to have sex, you either say yes or you say no, and be like, well, she's gonna go have sex with someone else. So I gave in. I said, okay, you know, we had sex. I'll never forget. It was Halloween. We didn't go to school. We went to her house and did the business. And that was something at that time in my life. I was looking to wait. You know, I thought I was going to get married and have sex. That was what I believed at the time. Um, More of an innocent kid back then, you know, not to say I didn't have dirty thoughts, I would be lying, but in terms of the thoughts versus the actions were different. So I had a lot of impure thoughts, but my actions were way more pure than my thoughts. So when she came along, she was this hot girlfriend, you know, all the guys wanted to be with her. So when she's like, oh, let's have sex, and I'm like, oh, okay. And that became very problematic, because once we started having sex, I didn't know how to stop. So with that being said, was just, forget it. I was just all over the
Wow.
place. I didn't know how to control myself.
Wow.
It turned into a very wild lifestyle that really, I found myself, the hormones were raging. we were just like all over New York City, just having sex everywhere. Like it was just a weird experience for me. I think at some point became addicted. Like, yeah, and she was addicted too. I mean, we were like in the street, had to go somewhere and off to the side, in the subway station, on the train, and the elevator, the staircase, there's every possibly place you could drowning in the water, not in the water, but but it was just crazy, and I just wish that I just had someone that could have kind of talked to me about those things, because I didn't have it. And to me, that's a very important part of life, especially for young people, because a lot of times how you turn out, it dictates how you continue. Because when do you stop? When do you stop that behavior? Once you've started it, once you're addicted to something, when do you stop it? How do you grow out of it? So that was an issue that I had, and then of course HIV/AIDS was coming out, and I think, if nothing else, kind of put a stop to that addiction would be HIV/AIDS, because unfortunately my uncle ended up being uh, afflicted with AIDS. And then shortly right after that, my brother ended up having AIDS. And that was right around that time, about 1990-ish, 91, somewhere around there. And of course, it was, scary now, but it was really scary back then. So that was, it didn't stop me, but it slowed me down. And I, behaved for a little while until I had my next girlfriend. And of course, was still out of control for a little while. But getting back, reeling myself back in, not to necessarily live on the fact of what I did, but just to the fact that I just didn't know any better. I didn't have any understanding what I should be doing, what I shouldn't be doing. And of course, for someone that age, let's be honest, it's not really healthy to engage in sex, because now you're talking about STDs, you're talking about pregnancies, and then a pregnancy is a whole different dilemma that you get into as a kid. You don't have any money. If she wants to have the child, you got to take this as a child now you should be responsible for. Of course, we know young people, they tend to do whatever they think is right at that time, depending on their mental capacity and the parents around them. So if you're not ready to take responsibilities for the consequences of your actions, it's not really appropriate to be engaging in those things. So that's kind of where I want to leave it. I wish my parents, or really my parents, would have taken some time to invest, to talk to me about hygiene, of course, characteristics, which I'll get into later, and for me, sex itself and the difficulties in having sex, because I feel like everybody experiences that for the most part. So I'll leave it there, and I'll pass the ball over to Dawn.
All right. Well, things that I guess I wish my parents would have taught me. Well, they kind of taught me a lot of things about how I didn't want to be treated. And in a relationship too, how I didn't want to treat the person I was with. My parents, yeah, had like an interesting relationship and showed me a lot of things that, made me kind of second guess what love really is. So I really wish that they kind of would have showed me maybe healthier loving options, like not so, verbal, not so physical, not so like just adulterous, so that kind of taught me the things that I don't really want specifically, but through my own trial and error, I kind of wish that they would have showed me that, sex and love isn't synonymous, that sex doesn't mean that somebody does love you, kind of teaching me that those actual boundaries, like you were kind of talking about. I think sex does become like an addiction where people like are just so addicted to the gratification, and like also the psychological aspect that you're emotionally connecting with a human like that and also getting such gratification. So that's something dangerous, I think, for young people to be experimenting with. And I was actually really lucky growing up with the internet So whenever there was something I didn't really want to ask my parents or something I really wanted to learn about that I was kind of too shy to talk to somebody about, I could just go to Google. I could just go to YouTube. I could just, figure that out for myself. So I think that was really helpful in me learning things when I couldn't go to my parents. But I wish, I had a better relationship with, my dad and understanding men more. It's kind of cool that I'm the only female here, so I can kind of give my female perspective. But yeah, I kind of wish I had a better relationship with him, so I knew, like what men really need in a relationship, in a mature relationship, so I could have healthy relationships myself. Because without that, I find that I didn't really understand the men that I was dating. I didn't really know how, they worked. I didn't really know kind of like the things that they needed when they weren't telling me. So I feel if I had a more personal relationship, that could have been easier for me. So I wish I would have learned that. And yeah, I just wish I could have just talked to them more about the complicated, complex issues. But other than that, I had the internet, so I'm not too mad about it.
So I'm just
The
gonna say
internet.
that
Was that a
Dawn,
lot?
that Dawn Kane just made me feel like an old fogey just now.
You were, yo. Thanks.
Said,
Oh, I had the
I grew up
internet.
with the
I'm like,
internet.
excuse me.
No,
You know.
no.
Let me tell you, I'm gonna go up to that Toronto. I'm gonna fix you for that.
What? No,
Internet.
no shame, no
Oh,
Oh,
shame.
made me
I'm
feel
just,
like an old
Mhm.
dude.
no way. It's just my perspective. It's just
No, because
cool.
by the time the internet came out, I was grown already. So that's what I'm
Yeah,
saying.
word.
Like if you say you grew up with the internet, by the time Google and all that came out, I was already an adult, well
Yeah,
into my
well,
20s.
90s baby,
Yeah, whatever, man. Whatever.
I'm not gonna say
Uh,
anything, so that's
yeah, Donovan's probably
Yeah,
the 2000s. Come
yeah.
on.
All right, Jim, go ahead now.
My perspective, and this is definitely not going to be the norm. Um, if when I talk about parents, which you told me, are you talking about ideally or from your own parental experience?
Ideally, from my experience of growing up and not knowing what to do. So this
Okay.
is what I wish
All
they
right.
would have told me.
All right. So ideally, I wish our parents would have told me, when is a girl like you? When you're being too, when you need to dial back your emotional feelings is two of them. It's two of them. Like I said, I was totally clueless. I don't want a girl like me or not.
Wait,
I know
Let
none
me
of the
stop you for a
signs.
second. I want to do the Samuel Jackson lager. That's a good one. Okay.
Shut up. I did not know when a girl like me. I was the most clueless guy on the planet. I wasn't full of myself, but I was just like my head was in the clouds. My focus were some other place. It was some other place, some other place. It was not here on this planet. It was just like, my childhood was not. Oh, it was no. It was. I won't say it was normal, but it was definitely not something I would brag about, talk about, and my focus was just in different areas at the time. I didn't, so I wish I like realized when, someone told me my parents told me when a girl actually likes me. Um, what should I do in those type of situations? Just how to play it cool. It's like you don't want to seem too like overly eager. It's just like, it's just like, just to keep a balanced level. I wish some of my parents told me that. It was another one. He, how to dress, how to dress, not to wear like mixed match colors. How to dress. It's like, don't overkill. You don't gotta look too. You don't gotta look too overstated or stand out. How to accessorize. It's like, it was just like I was just lost in the sauce. Well, not that type of way, but I was just lost, confused, and trying to find your way in the world. It's like, like style, stylize, how to style, Like, oh wait, I've been wearing glasses since God knows when, so you know how to like really stylize your glasses so it doesn't look too obnoxious, you know, things like that. And it was just like, you know, like I wish somebody like they would have just taught me that instead of just being aloof themselves. But you know, that's another thing. Ideally, realistically now, and I'm gonna be honest with you, I'm glad they told me nothing. I'm glad they told me nothing. And I'm gonna fully explain that down the road.
Okay.
Realistically, I'm glad they told me nothing.
All right. So hold on to that thumbnail
Yes.
there. Okay.
Yes.
Don't forget it. Write
No,
it
I
down
won't.
if you
I
have
definitely
to.
won't.
Okay.
I won't.
All
I
right.
won't.
All right, Donnie. So it's your turn.
Uh, I think one of the things that I wish my parents, I guess you being one of
Yes, I'm one of
them,
them.
would have told me. It's more general, but it does have an effect on relationships. Um, I guess what that is, what I've had a problem with is, I guess, relying on people. Um, it's like I never had like a solid idea on who was a good enough person to rely on for support or whatever else. Just because obviously like I would see some family members have like various issues with each other, but not really get what the conclusion of that was, like how they solve that or move forward, or whatever I would see between obviously you and my mother or whatever else along those lines. I just didn't get like the full scope of those things, so it made me be wary about fully relying on people. Now, after several years, I've gotten better at that. Like, Dad, you know, I recently reached out to you to for advice on something,
Mhm.
and I improved on that via like therapy and our own interactions and things like that. But that was one of the things that, like, in relationships, if I was going through things, I wouldn't really put it on them because I didn't want them to be concerned or dragged down by whatever I had going on. So I guess that would be the thing that I would have wanted, because we pretty much were able to talk about a lot of other things in general. I think that would be one of the bigger ones that I could do.
I definitely can appreciate what you said there because you know when you're raising kids, when you have children, you try to figure. I mean, most parents, you know, I can't speak for all, but many parents, you try to figure out how to do better than your parents did for you. And that was always my thought. You know, my thought was like, I remember my experiences growing up with my parents and the interaction that I had with them or lack thereof. And I told myself that when I have my own children, that I would be active in their lives. But when you don't know better, sometimes it's hard for you to say things that need to be said. So, I mean, being that I was a child and now I'm a parent, it's easy for me to see both sides when you see your child experience something that you're like, wow, I wish I could have addressed that or spoke on it and things like that. Because it's, you know, a lot of times parents miss those things. You miss them because you're so busy navigating your own life. If your life is a mess or if you got a lot of things going on, unfortunately for me myself, by the time I became a parent, a lot of things going on in my family. My mom was sick a lot. You know, I was helping out my family as a whole. So you're engaged in a lot of things. And sometimes you forget, oh, let me keep track of what's going on with my son, talk to him, see how things are going. And you can get so caught up in life that you can forget to ask or talk about important things with your children. And so while I look at my own parents and some of the things that they neglected to tell me was based on selfishness, it was also based on the fact that they were going through their own issues themselves. So when you're going through issues, it's very hard for you to kind of be on top of everything. So, you know, it's always important to make time for your child. And if nothing else, that's what I'd always try to do for Donnie because, you know, he didn't ask to be here. So when you're a parent, you have to invest in your child, whether it's giving them the best of your ability or finding somewhere where they can reach out and get the help that they need. And just like he said, when he wanted to get therapy, I was all for it. I wasn't like, oh, you don't need therapy, that's for crazy. There's so many people in the Black community, they don't want to have therapy at all. It's a stigma to get therapy. A lot of people don't believe that it's healthy for you to get, but that's ridiculous. So when he wanted to talk to someone, I was all for it. Do what you got to do. um it wasn't about placing blame on whose fault it was, or you know try to absolve myself of anything that I did wrong or may have missed or overlooked, because sure, I've overlooked some things because I didn't know better. I didn't have a guide. You never know what your child is going through until they go through it. So there's no like perfect manual for your child, because what one book may tell you to do for this child may not work for that child. So when he was coming along and things are going on, yeah, there were certain things in hindsight that I wish I could go back and say, yeah, I would love to tell him that ahead of time so he would be prepared. And I think that's the importance of having this discussion today, is for those of people who may be having small enough children at this point in time that they can kind of open themselves up into supporting their children. And even those of you who may have been through this themselves, to climb out of that dysfunction that they've gotten into as a result of not having parents that were able to explain things to them so that they can understand it for themselves and do right by themselves. So that's really what I'm trying to get at here. So now I'm turning this over back to Dawn.
Hello.
So what do you have for us here?
Um, I think you said a lot of really great things. And I think that, parents, their number one job is to support and to love their children. And I know that when I have kids, that's going to be, the only thing that I do through trial and error, and I'm somebody who wasn't fortunate enough to kind of have parents who really understood me. And through that misunderstanding, I felt like they didn't support me. And I find that like I was going through so much trying to get that support and that validation from them, and there's no real replacement. So if you don't have that relationship with your parents, it's really hard to find, and to find that strength for yourself. But through just acceptance and meditation and just reflection, I've kind of found peace with it, and we do have an understanding and a okay relationship. But it definitely took a toll on things in my relationships with men, and even just girls and friends, like understanding how to communicate properly with people that you love, and how to deal with problems that arise, and deal with deal with polarizing opinions and stuff like that. So yeah, the number one job is for parents to support and love them. And I can't wait to have kids of my own to do that. So yeah.
All right, Jim, we're back at you again.
So I got no kids. I think a
Well,
product of my childhood
pending.
Oh my
Pending,
goodness.
kids pending.
Yeah,
Pending
whatever.
Maury Povich
Test pending.
Yeah,
or
you
Lauren Lake.
you're dying. You're dying for me to be on paternity court or something. You just
Jerry.
You are the father.
My parents in childhood made me have not an aversion towards children, because Jonathan would tell you, he thinks I'm very I can connect with children easier than adults. He tells me all the time. He said I'm better with children. I don't see it, to be honest with you. I just, feel like I'm just myself, but he'll tell you.
I just want to cut in. As a child, I was a big fan of you, so I think that's true.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Exactly. Let me interrupt. First of all, let me interrupt him there, because he's full of doo-doo. Okay. Because if one person is amazing with kids, it's him. Jim is an awesome when it comes to children, he he understands them a lot better than most people do. And he's able to engage children where they feel comfortable with him, they bond with him, and they develop a close, they definitely, definitely. Like when I tell you, if you want someone to mind your child, Jim is probably that person, because they'll love him. They'll love him. They'll enjoy the time with him. He's patient. He's understanding and kind. And that's what young people need. They don't need grumpy old people. Go sit down and eat your food and this and that. But he just has a rapport that he just straight charms the kids, and they enjoy him. They miss him when he's gone. They can't wait to see him again. They FaceTime him. They, when are you coming over? Why you're not here? So don't let him lie to you. I don't know what he's talking about. He's on some bull crap over there. All right, go ahead, John.
Thank you. Um, I for that, what Jonathan says, I really honestly don't know where that came from for me. It just developed over time. With Because my childhood was totally opposite from that, from what I was exposed to. I guess it was just a way of compensating for something like that. Um, I agree with Jonathan with the parent standpoint that they're involved with their own selves and what they have to do sometimes before they realize, that they are a parent first, and then, have their responsibilities towards their child, mostly first, and then what they have to take care of. And, children gets lost in the shuffle with that type of ideology. And for me especially, I was lost in the shuffle with my mother mostly, and then my father. They were divorced when I was um 5. I think the divorce was finalized. So I didn't really know about my father too much. I knew of him. I only seen him a few times, but he was living his own life, and I think that type of neglect was made me see, like, okay, well, if they can't do it, I have to do it for myself. And most of the time in my own life, it was just doing things for myself, finding out about things. I didn't have the internet back then, so it was just like, asking people, or actually going to where I had to go myself and just finding out about it. Jonathan would tell you I was a big explorer back when I was in high school. I like going places.
The original Dora.
It was just, yes, I went around New York City at least maybe like 5 times by the time I reached college. I was able to have that type of experience where, I had to be self-sufficient. It was the hardest thing, but it made me realize, that there's some things, I missed on a lot of things, I should say. I missed on a lot of things passed over this kid's experience, but for the most part, it was, I try to be very positive with it. I had to lean on a lot of other people that weren't my parents, which was kind of embarrassing. There was just no type of support structure at the time. And, I just, out of not talking, out of pure embarrassment, really, and shame, more than, me being able to have an open dialogue with people. And that's where my resistance to talking with people came from, was out of those shame and embarrassment. And it created a lot of angst and unnecessary tension between people, because I really didn't have a problem with people. It was just that I had those times, and things get taken the wrong way, and things are lost in communication, and I didn't know how to communicate. I was just a kid, and I didn't know how to speak to adults and things like that. So it became more of an anxiety for me to converse with people, adults, and sometimes people my own age, because they just didn't understand, or they never really, they understood deep down, but they never confronted it themselves until later. And I was willing to do it now at that time, because I basically had nothing, and it was just more tension for me. and I just wanted to at least talk with someone about it. Unfortunately, I did when I was 16, 17, when I got to had a part-time job at a youth center and a rehabilitation center, and they had social workers, and I used to talk. I worked with one, under him, learned about therapy, and a psychiatrist when I first learned about DSMs and psychiatric medication. And I was able to converse with them for hours on end, and it really helped me navigate the last 2 years of high school. And it made me realize, and they made me realize that, you know, girls actually like me, but I was just too oblivious, too oblivious. I didn't learn about, you know, stuff like that from my parents. It was, it was from a social worker. God, I feel so embarrassed. It was from a social worker. And, you know, I, it just, the world just opened for me, like right there. I was able to, see a lot of things that I've missed. And, you know, I won't say that I don't have like regrets that things in it. I didn't get to see things sooner. But at the same time, at the same token, that, it made me realize that, that there's more out there than just, me focusing on myself, and me trying to, like, me getting over my anxiety and my embarrassment and stuff like that. And it made me see a bigger picture. So, I mean, but, with the kids my age and adults, it was just hard to communicate just from those two feelings that I had. It was rough.
I mean, I could see what you're saying. Definitely, since I've been there. So definitely. I mean, yeah. I'll
Yeah,
leave it
I've
at
been there
that.
too.
All right, Donnie. What do you have?
I guess this might be a slight departure, but this idea of understanding is very important, I think. Like Jim mentioned it, a lack thereof, I guess. Um, I think understanding is probably one of the things that allowed my relationship with my parents to be where it is right now. I think, in the sense that because I at least made an effort to attempt to understand that, as you mentioned, you guys are dealing with your own lives at the same time. There's all these other things happening. It prevented me from having this issue a lot of people have with their parents, where they hold resentment towards them for things that have happened because they weren't able to get closure on it, or some people just become completely estranged with their parents because they um, can't reconcile their differences or anything like that. I think it's important for both ends to somewhat be able to understand that things aren't black and white, and it's usually not an issue of like the parent, all of the parents' problems are a result of the child, or vice
Mhm.
versa. I think understanding will save a lot of people's relationships with their parents. That's just something I want to throw in there after hearing Jim's story.
I don't find that too much of a departure because I think it kind of ties into everything that we're talking about. And
I
of
agree.
course, once time is passed for you on the child end, it doesn't necessarily mean that it has passed. And like you said, it's important, I guess, to kind of jump on what you said, is important, like you said, to not harbor resentment, no matter how poor of a job your parents may have done. I mean, if they've done great, that's
Mhm.
wonderful. But if they did a bad job, to harbor resentment for the job that they did, it just doesn't help you at all. And I think that's really great that what you said, and it's very important as a person who, like you said, I've been through that myself. Parents going through whatever they went through, and sort of was the collateral damage as a result of that. But the one thing that I've never allowed myself to do is blame them for how I turned out. Of course, there's an influence involved. And of course, there's a handicap that you get because you don't know better. You're missing that piece that you need to get to the next level. But there's also a thing in life that we say better late than never, right? And that has to do even with ourselves. So there's some people who go through their whole lives never learning about themselves, never improving on the things that they need to improve, and they go to the grave the same flawed person that they were with, that they became early on in life. So it's important that, one, if you had absentee parents or parents that did a bad job or were too busy or were abusive, whatever the situation may be, not to fault them with resentment because they were living the lives that they thought was fit, right or wrong, and it's the same thing with yourself. The point of this conversation that we're having here is to offer reflection, to offer a chance for you, if you don't have kids and plan to have children, or perhaps they're at the point now, or you're that person that you missed out on getting reared growing up, but you need to eradicate the conflicts that you have within yourself. And that's really what this is about. I mean, we're talking about this from a parental point of view, child from the parent, parent to the child. But this is more so about ourselves because we've all had parents, whether they were mother or father, uncles or aunts, grandparents, adopted parents, foster, we've all had someone that was charged with taking care of us. So we all are a product of our environment, good, bad, otherwise. So we have to take a look at where we grew up, the experience we've had, good and bad, take the good, grow from there, understand the bad, and move on from that point in time. So that's really like you said, not much of a departure though, even though you said
No.
it was to me very on track with the conversation. So I think moving forward.
Oh wait, real quick
Okay.
before you carry on, because you brought something up that I actually forgot to even mention. When you mentioned blame, I think that's also a big one. I discovered this through my first ever like serious relationship. When you assign blame, both people lose, in my own opinion, because the point of a discussion or an argument or a confrontation or whatever is never to figure out who's wrong. It's to find a solution that works for both of the people.
Mhm.
So when you start throwing out blame for issues, even if it's valid, you're now just making that person an antagonist in your story, and it's never gonna be solved at that point.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah. So
Mhm.
Dawn, I guess we can.
Yeah, let's get. I got a lot to say.
Yeah,
I said
yeah.
a lot of good stuff. It's just crazy how polar opposite my views and my experiences. Because all the things that you're saying about understanding and having parents that want you to be better. I haven't had those experiences, and I'm not trying to place blame. I'm not trying to not understand them and resent them because I've been through it. I was a very angry kid, and when you place blame and you deflect all of that pain, you're not doing any like good for yourself. You're literally just internalizing all of that trauma. So once you free it, once you let go of it, which I have worked my ass off to try to reach an understanding of my parents that I felt like I didn't really get back. And that's why we've always kind of had a conflict because I was going forward above and beyond to try and understand everything that they've been through. And I do understand. I have been my mother's, therapist for years. Like I know everything that my family's been through. And I understand that, they weren't ready to have kids at the time. They were going through the same shit that a lot of young Black Canadians were going through in Toronto and Nova Scotia. So I fucking get it. Sorry, I get it. But it gets to a point where it's like, okay, I'm an adult now. You're an adult now. I'm trying to meet you halfway. You're not even walking towards me. So when that understanding isn't mutual, when you don't get, that energy and that time, that respect, that love back, doesn't it become toxic? Doesn't it become more detrimental to your health? Because that's what I find was happening to me. My mental health has been dwindling when I focus, really hard on trying to be there for her and everything. And I do love my family. I do have an amazing, good relationship with them. I'm just speaking freely because this is a open space. So, but my experiences are extremely different, and I have a lot of peace with myself, and I had to build myself up. Like, you know, I had them telling me that I should humble myself, that I should not be so ambitious, that I should, stick to the traditional ways. And that's not fair. That's not who I am. That's not your daughter. So for me, my parenting style will be supportive of who that individual is. And I find that, yeah, like everything you guys are saying is valid, but it's just sometimes there's a different side of things where it's like the kid tried, and it's damaging to us to have to constantly find that validation and not get rejected. So that's my little piece. Does that kind of like stick on board kind of what you're saying?
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
Devil's
it
advocate.
does.
Absolutely. What I would just further say to that, I think what I was saying before, definitely is not in conflict with what you just said. It's just to know that even in all of that, that you can't concern yourself with pointing a finger at somebody because it's unproductive for yourself. I'll give you a perfect example. My mom was, at some point, she became mentally and verbally abusive towards me, and did some kind of not nice things to me. And I'll never forget. At some point, I think she moved from New York to Vegas, and the things that she did to me were done to her at some point. And I'll never forget. She had to take that long walk, not literally, but she called me from Vegas to New York. I remember I was sitting in my office and the phone rang, and it was her on the phone. And she was in a bad situation and she needed help. And she was very uncomfortable with calling me. She broke down crying, and she talked about how bad of a parent she was. And I wasn't a bad kid at all, but for some reason, my mom had it in for me. I can't even tell you why. But uh, at the end of this, she needed me to send her money. Like, she needed to get some type of work permit because she wasn't a resident of Nevada. So, being that she wasn't a resident, she needed to pay for a work permit. So she had to, in the end, ask for money, which she was uncomfortable with doing. So I remember she was like, "Oh," the first thing she said to me was, "I know you're ashamed of me." So I listened to what she said. I, sat quiet, let her say her whole spiel. And at the end of it, I said, "You know what? I'm not ashamed. I'm not angry. Um, I'll help you, because what's the point of holding on to what she did? I've moved past that in my life. I just couldn't travel back in time and focus on the things that she did to me. So, whatever my mom did to me, or, didn't do, whatever dysfunction we had as a mother son, that I just couldn't allow it to travel with me for the rest of my life, because I find when you hold animosity towards people, it just really holds back your peace. So,
Mhm.
like I said, I don't disagree with anything that you said. I think what you said is on point, and I don't even feel like it's even in conflict to anything that we said. I think it sort of goes right in. It's just a different perspective
Mhm.
of your experience. So, but
Yeah, I've never really talked about it before out loud. So it's kind of, I don't want to come off like,
yeah. No,
ungrateful,
not at
you
all.
know,
Not at
but
all. But
yeah.
that's, I mean, that was my experience. But the one thing that I've learned is, whatever people do to you, you just can't hold on to it. You just got to let it
You have
evaporate
to.
into the universe. Let
Gotta
it
let it
go.
go.
And I sleep well at night, because when people do things to me or they say things that hurt me, you know what? I don't even worry about it. I worry about taking care of my family, trying to be healthy, being a good steward of life and being the best person that I can. And if, unfortunately, I've had siblings that they pointed the finger at the parents, bitter, two of my siblings passed away, and they passed away blaming my mom for everything that went wrong in their lives. And I'm like, why? You could have been worrying about yourself, focusing on yourself, getting yourself right. But instead, you were doing the wrong things, and you're like, oh, it's mom's fault. Okay. Now, how does that help the problem? It doesn't really. So, my advice is to anyone, if you just, I didn't have good parents. I didn't. They were in their right good people. They just weren't good parents to me, and they weren't good parents in the house. But it the environment and the atmosphere and the breeding ground for success was so adversarial. Like, how whoever made it in my family, they really made it against all of the odds, because they weren't in our favor at all. So moving forward to being a parent, it's like you have to do everything you can to make sure that your child doesn't have to experience the hardships that you experience. So the good thing about my life was I was able to, when Donnie was born, not to be like my parents. Their my well-being was not first nature. His was. When we went to Comic-Con, um, a couple of weeks before, I was just released from the hospital. I had appendicitis and I was very sick, almost died. And I literally lost about 40 pounds. So I needed I was in recovery mode, but I was like, I refuse. I got my scrawny little butt up, met him, we went, and I wanted to make sure that I was able to support him, no matter what I was going through. And invest in him and do the best that I can. Not to say that everything that I did was perfect or right, but understand that there's more to life than yourself, especially when you have children, and I think that's important for parents to understand that really until children can take care of themselves, they should be a part of your breath. When you breathe, you're not only breathing for yourself, but you're breathing for them, because if you die, who takes care of your children? So, that's how I look at it. I look at being a parent, you got to move on from all of those hurts, all of those traumas. And I had a lot. My mom made me homeless. I was literally had nowhere to live. And I could have easily held the grudge, just hated her for it. But hate just makes you older a lot faster than you need to be. When people have hatred in their heart, I just see they age so fast. There's some people that are my age, and I'm like, I can't believe we're the same age. You look like 10 years older than I do. And some people even younger. I won't blow her spot up, but there's some woman I work with, and we were talking about going to school together. And I was like, what year did you graduate? And she was like, way down the road from me. And I was like, what? I didn't even realize she was younger than I was, because she looked older than I did. And a lot of times when you just let things weigh you down, you just age in a way that you shouldn't. So, I love what you said. And it to me is very relevant to the conversation. And I appreciate you for opening up, because I think it's important, because a lot of people are like you, a lot of people are like myself, Jim and Donnie. Everyone falls into one of these four categories here. And it's important that everyone's perspective be represented. So I think it's very important in what you said. And I thank you and value it a whole lot. Believe me, it makes me actually appreciate you more than before we started talking today. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, it's nice. It's good to have like such a safe space, and
Yeah.
every week we talk about real issues, but sometimes this one just hits a little closer because it's it's your parents. But like you said, I kind of want to touch upon like once you become an adult, you kind of have to let go of that hatred, that resentment, that blame, because it's really not their fault anymore. You are now an adult and you are able to make your own decisions, and you're able to change it if you want to, by getting therapy, by being creative, by pursuing ambitious, successful goal. So once you let go and you kind of realize that we're all human, your parents included, you're able to find that peace. But if you hold on, yeah, you're going to be getting wrinkles everywhere. everywhere.
That's so amazing that you said that, because and it's amazing because before we had this discussion, that was actually a point that I wanted to bring up and forgot to make, and you sort of picked it up, and I appreciate that you put it out in the universe.
Yes, great. Great.
All
What
right,
was the
Jim.
point? What was the point?
About at some point it becomes on you to
Yes.
deal with things, to handle things, to make the changes, to, because like you said,
Yeah.
there's a point where you get to this level in life where it's like now everything is on you. So it makes sense to not hold on to those type of feelings, because now you have to be responsible for yourself.
It's your mental health. It's your life. Like you have to, like, if you're not happy with it, you got to just find a way to get healthy. And that's not for your parents to do or for your children to do. It's for all of us to do for ourselves. Totally.
That's so important that you said that. Oh, I just felt so much better that you said it.
Yes. Good. Same frequency.
All right, Jim. Okay, now what do you have there?
I have a combination in my own of what you guys said, and my own, I guess my own little side piece to bring in. My mother wasn't born here. She's not native here. So some of the problems I have was cultural differences. Some of it was, age, not age, but time period related as well. The cultural aspect was something that my mother never adapted to. It still hasn't. For being here and being from her own country. She's from South America. Uh, that created a lot of miscommunication. She was still, some parents, when, they come from another country, are still trapped in their ways of what they've learned, and they have never adapted to, American life. And when you're trying to communicate what's going on now, sometimes they give you answers or advice that's not really relevant for here and now, what you're doing, and for culturally, for here. It's like it may fit where you come from, but it's not here. And the lack of adaptability on her part was just made things worse. Like what you said, in the end, it was up to me to make that distinction, and to get through that. When you're a child, it's always okay to be confused. When you become an adult, there's some things you have to be definitive on yourself and what you do and how you do it. And, blaming your parents because they didn't know sometimes doesn't work, because sometimes they didn't know either. What were they supposed to tell you, Or I'd rather them not tell me anything than make something up. You look 10 times worse, so, or, you being lied to. A parent saying, I don't know, is a lot smoother to me than a parent lying to you. And then it's like, oh, I didn't know that. Like, to me, it makes it worse. So, with my parents, it was, I don't say, they lied. It was just mostly an I don't know. And when you come to that realization that I don't know, it made things a lot easier, because, you shouldn't hold them accountable for, your adult actions, but you realize in your childhood, it's like, they just didn't know any better. And it's like, why are you stressing over something that they may not know themselves or don't know any better? The things we hold on to sometimes, especially from being from a child to adult, it's so trivial. And the solution or the reasons why is so minuscule. It's like, why did you even bother in the first place? When really, if you really reflect upon it. And I came to that realization with my mother, because she was my main provider. And I came to that realization, and things became a lot smoother, in dealing with her. And it's like, I don't need to hold on to this crap and things like that. On my father's side, though, he wasn't there. He was like a non-factor. So for me, it was like, I and it's like really, really like the most stupidest thing I did. When he tried to reach out, to my sister and myself, it was just like, you know, I could just ignore him because he ain't do nothing. And you know, it's like at a point, you know, it was like, all right, you know, take time. But then secondly, I'm becoming like, all right, I'm becoming a big jerk now. This is like really jerky mode for me because I'm just being like a total jerk. And reasonably, I didn't have to be. And it was just like me just, you know, having feel like I have power over a parent because they ain't do anything. And you know, it's like, you know, you deep in the back of your mind, if you had any type of real upbringing, you know better than that. It's like, all right, you know, you gotta confront that reality that, you know, they probably will want to talk to you after some amount of time. And you know, it's always good to hear, I won't say hear, but like get an explanation from the horse's mouth instead of secondhand sources, because, you know, according to my mother, you know, he was like the worst thing since sliced bread. But according to some of the stories, he was the worst thing since sliced bread. But that's another topic. But you know, he had made it himself. That's just made it, you know, a lot better. And I never had any resentment towards my mother and father. My mother, I was mostly the max. I would say was extremely annoyed at some of her mannerisms, behaviors, because she's not from here and she never adapted to being here. And she's old age now, and a part of her still has not adapted. The one thing I would say that I do is that when I became of age, she felt like I had to be responsible for some of her decisions. I was like, no, 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 no. There's no child parent reversal here. I'm not your parent, so I can't help carry you in certain things that you want to do. I was like, I can't do it. Can't do it. I'm trying to figure out my own life, trying to get things in order. I can't do it. You know, some things she just thought, you know, that I'm ready for adulthood at 17, 18. In her cultural, yeah, where she's from, yeah, that's fine. When you appear, no, 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 no. She had to slow roll on that one. I had to make her realize that she had to slow down on that. But for my experience, for my interactions, it's first culturally, then frame of mind of how what they thought at that time what it is to be a parent. So, you know, I know some people go through that, especially from the cultural aspect, because they're adjusting to appear while you are getting started. So I never held her to I never really say anything until when I realized that she still had not done that. And at some point, yeah, if your parent still has not adjusted, especially to culturally or to the times now, you know, it's okay to tell them, you know, okay, we don't do things this way anymore. We do things this way. You know, it's some older people are good at adapting to cell phones. My mother has not adapted to a cell phone until I showed her FaceTime, and then she automatically wanted to adapt to a cell phone. You know, it's whatever interests them, but I realize that's how it is. And as children, we don't realize that until we go through experiences that I won't say that could be similar. And when you see that, it's like, oh, that's why. And it becomes the most simplest answer. And it's like, why do I even bother? It's like this, you laugh at yourself for, you know, blaming your parents or, you know, for not seeing it sooner, or even sometimes yourself for not seeing it sooner. But, you know, the most complex journey, just kick yourself. And basically, that's what I did mostly growing up, was kicking myself, because it was just that simple. For me, anyway, it was just that simple.
Mhm.
All right, Donnie. So Jim just said a mouthful there. So hopefully you have something to unpack on your end.
Oh
What do you
yeah.
want to say?
Yeah, I was gonna throw it back to something that Don had mentioned. The because I've had several conversations with people in regards to this. The idea of like when you try but it doesn't work, That's a big one. I think there are a lot of situations where with your parents, you just kind of have to stomach the loss, for lack of better words. Um, like what Jim mentioned about generational differences. I've had one of those issues, not specifically with you, Dad, but I've had it where I wanted to pursue more creative ventures, but more traditional, like STEM sort of careers were pushed in my path.
Mhm.
And at least when it comes to things like that, which that are clearly based on time when they were born or where they were born, culture or generational thing, as Jim mentioned, for those, the most you can take out of them is that there's at least a good intention on their part.
Yeah.
While ideally you wouldn't have to settle for something like that. Ideally, you would just be able to get the support you want.
Ideally, but
Yeah,
yeah.
with the way things are, that's the most you can take out of it. At least they care enough to try to push something they think is good for you.
Mhm.
Though it definitely can cause several arguments, disagreements, heartache. That's the best you can get from something like that. Of course, there are going to be situations that are deeper than that, where it's not so easy to reconcile. One of the strategies I've taken is, and this is just for relationships in general, really. Um, there's a limited degree where you kind of have to put your brain on autopilot. Um, when you figure out that you and someone else are having a clash that will never have a compromise to it,
Mhm.
sometimes you got to just be willing to hear what they say in one ear and out the other one, and then just move on with your life.
Mhm.
Because sometimes you can't come to a middle ground on that, and doing that will ultimately rescue a relationship sometimes.
Yes.
It's unfortunate, but at the very least, as we go forward, as my dad said, we're able to do things that our parents couldn't do for us. So ideally, hopefully, it is going this way. As time progresses, you'll see less of these issues popping up at the very least.
Mhm.
Y-
And
y-
just to say, can I say something? I think
Sure.
that was helpful advice. I feel that really helped me, resonated with me, and hopefully with how I handled situations with them. But it's true. Like I've come to the point now where it's like, okay, I just can't react to, everything. So my reactions are no reaction. Just okay, I accept you now for who you are. This is a relationship. I still love you as you are, and like you said, that's that. So as time goes on, you heal and like you get better and maybe you can come together. But
Hmm.
sometimes you do have to cut your losses or stomach your losses. And yeah, thank you for the advice.
Yeah, Donnie,
Not for me. For
I love that, but it made me think about something else you talked about is also racism, right? And you know, Donnie is multicultural in his dating life. Doesn't
Hmm.
see color. His likes who he likes. Today it could be this person. Yesterday was a different, not the same. So
Hmm.
far, I haven't seen two girlfriends that were exactly alike or even similar. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, not to throw you on the spot
a
there.
man of the world.
He had where was the first girlfriend that I know? Where was she from?
Well, here I could just do a quick roulette.
Go
The
ahead.
first one was from Bangladesh, it was South
Bangladesh.
Asia.
Okay.
The second one's from Russia. The third one was from the Philippines. And then my current girlfriend is Irish.
Okay.
Um, um,
Oh my goodness.
yeah, I always made the joke. I just wanted to have, like, if I'm multicultural, I want my descendants to be just really messed up. You know what I mean? Like
A
they
culture
go to
bomb.
school. You go to school. How do you be racist to that if they're like
Yeah.
everything?
So,
Yeah.
what I wanted to talk about is because I know some of his difficulties with
Yeah.
parents, and of course, it was a big concern on their side, who this kid was. He wasn't like his daughter. And I just remember the kids being around some of his classmates and they were having this discussion about it, and to see how even other friends that he had, they experienced similar issues, and they talked about how their parents were and how they wouldn't be those type of parents. So I appreciated, Donnie, you kind of making that point, because it just reminded me how you had parents in, I would say, I guess in my generation, that still harbored racist feelings and emotions, but you be the generation that say that you're not going to harbor those feelings towards, if you know, your peers, and then if you have children, you wouldn't put those type of sentiments on your children. So I think that's important, an important point that we talk about, improving on the generations, because you know it's weird when, I mean, I personally don't think like that, but to think that there are parents, I would say in my generation, that have kids that your age, that they're like, oh, why are you with this black guy, or you know, why can't you be with a person like you know, Russian, or from this place that you're from, this religion and stuff like that. So it's just, you know, I think it's important for, I mean, that's a hard part, but that's what I appreciate about the generation now, that they're kind of removing the stigma of race and ethnicity in terms of relationships, and how they view and are accepting of people from different cultures and backgrounds. Because to me, that's important, because
Yes.
unfortunately, I mean, I'm really about a decade removed from civil rights, more or less. So I grew up at the end of civil rights. I mean, I was born pretty much at the end of civil rights, when the next decade came, and you would think that people's mindsets would change that were born in my generations, but no, that there were people in my generation and around there that still had the same feeling as, you know, pre-civil rights. So I think it's admirable that young people, if there's one positive thing that I wouldn't complain about, is the idea that they want to eradicate racism. You know, I think that's important. And, you know, for you
Right.
parents out there, you know, if their child is in a relationship with somebody that's not from your ethnicity or nationality or whatever, you know, ideologies you may have, stay out of that, because, you know, that's a choice they have to make for themselves. You know, it's very important. So with that
Mhm.
being said, I just want to go to the next part of this conversation, and that's offering advice and pointing people in positive directions for parents or people who are recovering children, such as myself. And I guess everyone here is a recovering child. You know, we all were raised by someone for the most part. Yeah, I think Jim may have been raised by wolves. I'm not 100% sure. But no,
Yeah, they were involved too.
but I just want to kind of pretty much shore everything up on the positive, and uh, offer some points. Did you have something you wanted to say, Donnie, or because I saw you kind of, oh, okay, I just wanted to make sure. But, you know, I just want to kind of finish this episode on a positive standpoint here, that nuggets of wisdom that we can offer people who are interested in making things better for themselves and for their children. And if you plan on having children. So I think the first thing that is of importance, you know, I'm not going to give all the bullets. Hopefully, everybody will have their own bullets to share to this conversation. But the first thing is pay attention to your children, or pay attention to yourself as who you were as a child. So, regardless, if you have children, pay attention to them. If you are the child, pay attention to yourself by reflecting for yourself who you are as a person, the difficulties that you are having in relationships, and correlate that to what you didn't learn, because that, even to this day and age, I'm still learning about things that have caused troubles in relationships that I have had over the years, and my inability to effectively um, deal with them or engage in them, because I just wasn't prepared. I just wasn't mentally prepared. So I would just want to throw it out there, first of all, for the adults that may have had rough upbringings, is some type of counseling and therapy. That's very important. Reputable. Don't, you know, I'm sorry, don't call Steve Harvey show and ask him advice. I'm just, you know, those are good for a dating issue or something like that. But you want to talk to a reputable source, someone that can objectively respond to you, that's not going to tell you things that's going to get you in further trouble. And don't get me wrong, there are some therapists that are bad too, and they'll tell you it's everyone else's fault but your own. So you want to make sure that the person is honest with you. If they're not telling you that you've done anything wrong or that you need to improve things, there's probably not a good person to talk to, because we all do things wrong and there's all needs of improvement for all of us. And so that's my first advice there. And then pay attention to your children. Try to engage them and understand where they are in their time, because they're growing up. So when they're growing up, you need to talk about the things that they get, the challenges that they face growing up, and don't force them to respond to you. You know, it's important that I'm glad that Donnie had an understanding that whatever he shared with me was on his terms. You know, don't twist kids' arms and be like, you better tell me right now what you're doing. Because if they don't feel comfortable with you before then, they definitely won't be comfortable with you after, when you're basically trying to pressure them to tell you everything that's on the plate that they have. You know, you have to make them feel comfortable and empower them to come forward and meet you where they feel comfortable at, and then deal with things accordingly. And if you can't answer the problem, then go to therapy and talk to someone on ways that you can be supportive to your child. Therapy is important, whether it's some pastor, you know, or a psychologist, or depending on, there's some social workers that are very equipped to, you know, give you advice and stuff like that. So, you know, I would say if you can't help your child, then get assistance from someone who could offer you some points and follow them. Take perspective and follow the perspective if the points are valid. So, like I said, I'm not gonna bully the whole conversation here. I'll turn it over to Dawn and get some suggestions from her.
Mm-hmm. I think that it's really great to just focus on yourself, healing yourself. You know, first, we all have stuff that we have to deal with. So whether you go through therapy or whether you know, use your religion or Buddhism or whatever, just make sure that you understand that people's, you know, reactions and thoughts are not, you know, your own. So you just have to be able to control yourself and have a peace within yourself. And I find that's the most important thing for me, trying to get into motherhood, is making sure that like I am fully, you know, healthy and okay to like deal with obstacles and deal with maybe my child not acting the way that I predicted they would, and not overreacting. So before you can have any healthy relationship with anybody, you need to have a really healthy relationship with yourself. So that to me is the most important thing that I would like to give to, you know, everybody watching. And also just, you know, being kind and understanding. Like, you know, our parents went through a completely different time than we did. And, you know, we also went through a completely different time than our grandparents did. So, you know, respect and understanding goes both ways. So just making sure we're listening to each other and you know, giving each other validity and respecting our different opinions and perspectives, because if we can start there, then we can, you know, grow anywhere, I find. So just yeah, that's what I would have to say to the viewers. I love the conversation today. I think it's a great discussion.
All right, Jim, where are you at on this topic? What suggestions do you have?
It's not how you start, it's how you finish. It's always how you finish. You know, you can always stumble at the beginning, you stumble in the middle. It's always how you pick yourself up and cross that finish line at the end. You may not be first, you may not be second, but it's always an achievement to cross the finish line standing up. At some point, you know, you have to take ownership of yourself and the actions that you do, and you know, to move past what has happened to you. You know, you're not going to get full closure, you're not going to get the answers you seek, but at some point you have to be okay with it and to push yourself forward into another situation. You can't be trapped by what has happened to you. Don't stay in that box. And if you need help to get out of it, don't be scared to ask. It's not a bad stigma. It's not, you know, it's not negative. You know, it could really help you from an objective standpoint that you want to share your experiences with. And the best way to really start out is, not with a person that you may be too familiar with, but someone who's will objectively look at your situations dispassionately and don't prejudge basically on what's what happened. Individuals are scared of being judged sometimes, even by their peers, by their parents, or by other people. That unfortunately you have to get over. It's not easy. It's a lot difficult than you think, but eventually you have to get over it and continue on with your life. In addition, when you have children, it's a different animal. I don't have children, but um I will tell you this one story. My sister was getting her house redone, so she came to live with me for 2 years. And during that 2 years, I had to be a substitute parent. So my whole mannerisms changed. And it is a lot, it is a change, a lifestyle change. It's not about yourself, it's more about the children, helping them, pushing them along to try to be a better version of yourself or a better version of what your childhood may represent. And that push, you know, to a child is more important than sometimes how you feel of your own insecurities. I realized just by being there, a child will appreciate you more than just not being there and doing nothing because you feel that you may fail them. And children are very adept. They're very they very perceptive of emotional cues give off by their parents. And
Yes.
uh,
Very good.
when you take into account that, and they're not as simple as they may seem, even though they have simple needs at the time. It really does help with your relationship with them. And the first part about your children, as long as you're there, they will accept you and they will try to move along with you. So always be there for your child, no matter how small, no matter how big. Advice, even if you don't know, if you really say you don't know, a child will perceptively understand, not emotionally, perceptively understand. And as long as you try to at least come up with a solution with them, they will appreciate your effort that you are to being involved. It's I don't know, I make it sound real simple. And it a lot of us, especially myself, have insecurities about having children. That's how come I don't have any. But it is an insecurity that you are able to overcome and try to move forward with. Like I said, your personalities are always different when you're first starting out. It's when you finish, it's how you finish, to how you evolve yourself and to push yourself over the finish line. That's what really counts.
All right, Donnie, where are you at in the final advice stage here?
I suppose my advice would be, I guess this is for this can go for both the parent and the child. I guess regardless of how negative you may think your relationship is, I'd say it's always worth it to at least try to salvage it. That's it's not always gonna work. That's that's just how life is. But when you reach the end of your life, you'll be there with yourself, and you'll have a conversation over what you could have done, what you should have done different, and you don't want that to be one of the things that keeps you from resting easy. You know what I mean? Uh, I'd say just give your best foot, put your best foot forward, and give your best effort. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't. But always give it a shot.
And I'll leave
Yes.
everything there. That's a pretty good discussion that we had today. I hope that those who are viewing or listening, depending on what platform you're on, really got something out of this discussion. I mean, we'll continue to have talks just like this because it's more important that every person out there in the world just be able to deal with the things that matter most. And that's one, the lives of your children. And secondly, and just as important is yourself, because if you're not well yourself, how can you be well for your kids? So with that being said, we want to thank you for listening in, and we'll definitely check you on the next go round.
Ooh.